When I entered the community, we were mostly in the southern United States because our mother house is in Nashville. But over the years, we kind of expanded throughout the U.S. and then eventually even internationally now. So
yeah, it's amazing.
It's been really beautiful to see. And right now, the vocations, what is the Lord doing? Like, there's something really powerful right now. I think this is a kind of Dominican moment in some sense. The friars and the sisters of many congregations are doing really well, and it's a gift of God, a gift of the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
Dominic always placed a heavy emphasis on study. We're not studying for studying's sake. We're not just trying to be intelligent or impressed. That would be dangerous actually to the spiritual life.
Yes.
But trying to ponder God's word so that, as St. Thomas wrote, we would contemplate and give to others the fruits of our contemplation. People will always be asking for prayer, and I love that about living religious life and wearing the beautiful Dominican habit, and kind of, it's not about drawing people to myself, but reminding them of God's love for them. And I find that everywhere I go, people will stop me and ask me for prayers and ask advice. And in every culture, every language, I've never been anywhere that people don't seek you because they're seeking God. And so they can trust that this woman consecrated to Christ, this bride of Christ, is actually for them. And I love that we have that calling.
Sister Mary Madeline Todd, thank you for coming back on the show.
You're welcome. It's great to be back.
I mean, last time we talked extensively about Catherine of Siena. That was a very special episode for me. This time we said, hey, let's just talk about Dominican spirituality, your own story. I have no idea where this is going to take us, which is sometimes the most fun episodes we do. So tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll just get into it. Maybe you can talk about your vocation story, how you ended up sitting here with a doctorate in theology and a Dominican nun. I mean, it's kind of a great thing.
Yeah. Okay, so a little bit about my own connection with the order. Growing up, I really loved St. Francis of Assisi, and I didn't know a whole lot about St. Dominic, but I was super blessed that in my high school years, the Nashville Dominicans, the Dominicans of St. Cecilia, had come to my high school, Mount DeSales, a school in Baltimore. And I would say that was utterly transformative of my life. From the day I walked through the door at Mount DeSales, it was a school that had a visitation history, but the Dominicans had come, and the sisters were not only some of the best teachers I've ever had. They knew their subject matter, whether that was math or science or religion, but they taught the faith beautifully. But I guess what was so influential was not just the teaching, it was the joy and the dedication to Christ, to the church, and their absolute love for us as their students that was really transforming. I mean, I don't think when I started going to a Dominican high school, I had any idea what I was getting into. And I don't even think it was explicit to me at first exactly where this particular way of approaching teaching the faith was coming from, that they had this kind of Thomistic underpinning. But I knew that my mind was set on fire. I knew that I felt very loved. I really loved the sisters' love, not only for Christ, but for the church. I didn't really experience it before I was taught by the Dominicans, this deep love for Christ and the church. And so it was really transformative, and at such a critical time in my life of being a teenager. And then such that by the time I was a junior in high school, I actually was never on a natural level thinking about a vocation to the religious life. I definitely wanted to be married. I wanted to have a big family. I wanted to study medicine, be a doctor. And all of those things were very encouraged by everyone around me. And then interestingly for me, I was in a very severe car accident, and I was only 16 years old, coming home from career night at my high school, and a drunk driver hit me full speed head on. And so for me, this was a really life-changing event. I was in this context of great faith formation, and in that, having this dramatic accident that should have taken my life. Every person who came to the scene of the accident, the police didn't even come to my car at first because they said no one could have survived the way the car was crushed. But having that kind of dramatic life experience in the context of such a deep formation in my faith was kind of the magic combination, I guess. Because I remember when I survived the accident with no real long-term impairment, which I attribute to Our Lady's protection, actually, because the only thing that survived utter destruction of my car besides me was my rosary. Everything else that was in it was utterly destroyed. But the rosary was like nothing had ever happened. And I really kind of took it in my hand and said, okay, Mary, you're kind of guiding me. There's some reason I'm in this world and I haven't found it yet. And so I started more intentionally saying, Lord, what do you want for my life? So while being taught by the sisters, I had this sudden kind of wake up that there's a plan for my life that I should be actively seeking. So in that space of time, I also started going to daily mass with the sisters at the school. And anybody was welcome, but it was very quiet, very calm. And in the context of that, being taught so deeply to love. Like I remember my junior year, the sister who taught me assigning a research paper that I wrote 72 pages as a high school junior on transubstantiation and the real presence.
Oh, wow. And, that's when they knew you were going to get a doctorate.
And I remember like loving that. But I also remember it was in that space and context that I had this kind of wake up. I started going to daily mass and I realized I felt like the Lord was literally kind of proposing within me. And I was just so shocked. I mean, I just thought, you got to be a lot quieter, a lot more prayerful than I am. But the sisters were such a beautiful example that I think seeing Dominican life lived really helped me to be open to it, because it was such a surprise to me that the Lord would even call me. But then just that courage to say, maybe the way I dreamed or visioned my life is not what God's dream was for my life. Although over the years, what I've come to see is like every dream of your heart, there is a way God is fulfilling it. It's just sometimes very different than what you pictured. So that by the time I was a senior in high school, I was still wrestling with a lot of things in my own way of thinking and being and going deeper in my faith. But I had one of our sisters as my religion teacher, and I didn't really realize explicitly what she was using was like a mini version of the Summa to instruct us. But I just remember every question I had, the answers were so profound. And I thought, wow, like this well-ordered of a way of approaching reality, of looking at who God is and how my life choices kind of fit into that plan. It was so life-changing, really, transformative. So by the end of that senior year of high school, I pretty much knew that I probably was being called. I wasn't ready to step away yet. I had a full scholarship for my undergrad studies. And so my dad was like, you're not going to walk away from a full ride scholarship, you know. So I did want to do the pre-med track, and I started that. But the more I went forward with my own plan, the more I felt like, you can't run from God, you know, good old Prophet Jonah. Like if this is what he made you for, I mean, I guess the sisters had helped me learn how to reason. So I was like, wait, if the creator of the universe who made me is calling me to this thing, he knows me better than I know myself. Like he knows the depths of my heart and my being. Like if he wants me to be a Dominican, if he's placing that in my heart, then it must be the thing that's going to lead to the ultimate happiness for me. And so, to my great surprise, the more I went forward with the discernment process, contacted the vocations director, you know, went to visit the sisters, the more the doors opened. You know, they opened, and I was really surprised by that. But I also knew that if God was calling, and that mutual discernment of the community saying, "Come," you know, then clearly this was something He knew would bring great happiness. And I have to admit, I was utterly surprised by how much the life did fulfill the deep desires of my heart. And I didn't back then, they didn't have websites. There's my age, but and like it wasn't like I had this long discernment of this community versus that community. You know, it was just kind of the sisters had taught me. They inspire me. The only other community I really thought seriously about was the Missionaries of Charity. I mean, I think in my generation, who wasn't inspired by Mother Teresa, and you know, she was alive, and seeing her and seeing the powerful work she did in the streets of Calcutta and with the poor, that was extremely appealing to me. But no door opened when I tried to pursue that. So it was kind of interesting how God works in the circumstances of your life to draw you.
For 17 years, I've been making ebooks and audiobooks of this amazing TAN library. And it's always been frustrating to me that I had to go to Kindle or Audible or wherever to get my own books from TAN. But now finally we have the TAN digital app. We have 900 plus ebooks and 300 plus audiobooks. These amazing writings of the saints, these spiritual classics, the most important books ever composed. The TAN digital app is the perfect place to where you can listen to this amazing stuff in the car or when you're on the treadmill or whatever you're doing. I'm personally using this. I love it. I know you will too. Go to Google Play or the App Store to get the TAN digital app. What about the spiritual life of the Dominicans kind of struck you? Because eventually here we're going to end up talking about what are those aspects of Dominican spirituality, maybe that are different or whatever, or that are emphasized in your community. But what about their spiritual life hit you? I mean, clearly you're an intellectual, so you saw, the intellectual side as a probably at least attractive, and Aquinas bringing great clarity to things. But what about the spiritual life struck you?
I think when I talk to young women who are thinking about possible vocations, I always say the two most important parts of any religious charism and any calling into a religious life are the way the community prays together and the way they live their community life together. So the other aspects flow from that. And I have to admit that the sisters, their prayer life, I really was drawn by the fact that in the Dominican Order, we have this interesting blend of the monastic traditions coming out of the ancient traditions, like think St. Benedict and living in the monastery, with the outward preaching apostolate that flows from that. And so I think for the life of prayer, just like recognizing that the sisters' whole day was punctuated, the Dominicans' whole day like flows from the Mass and the Divine Office. And even though all religious would be committed to the Mass and the Divine Office, the Dominicans singing in choir, chanting side to side. Literally, even the way we pray the Divine Office is a form of preaching, right? So even the way we face choir to choir and we chant back and forth, we literally proclaim the word of God to each other.
Oh, I've never thought about it like that.
So that's like a very specific kind of beautiful way that the prayer is integrated with the apostolate.
That's why you're facing each other, I guess.
Yes.
Wow.
So, and also, this is really interesting. A lot of people don't know this about St. Dominic, because I will say, people probably know St. Thomas Aquinas, St. Catherine of Siena more than they know St. Dominic himself. He's a pretty hidden founder. And I think he would want that his family is better known than he is. But Dominic really was a very prayerful man. And some of my favorite stories of the order are about Dominic's prayer. And so, he was dynamic and active preaching out in the daytime all day, but that the people who witnessed to his canonization said that St. Dominic would preach all day and pray all night. He slept very little. He had a real grace from God for that. And he would just be up, just crying out to the Lord, praying, interceding, weeping for sinners. And there's even some dramatic stories of St. Dominic, like that if you go to the Church of Santa Sabina in Rome, which was given to the Dominican Order while Dominic was still alive, there's a stone that covers where the martyrs' relics are kept in that church. It's an ancient church of Rome. And he would prostrate himself over the relics of the martyrs and just pray and intercede for the church. And there's this large stone over on a pillar that they say, like, the devil would throw this stone at him to try to get him distracted to get up and stop praying.
Wow.
But Dominic was just, I think sometimes people make this mistake that they think if you're super intellectual, you're going to be kind of cold and like whatever. Dominic would weep when he would say the Mass because he just had such a heart for the conversion. I mean, the whole founding of the order was really out of a desire to see that people who were mistaken were being led away from the church, away from the sacraments. And if you know a little history of Dominicanism, the Dominican Order, Dominic was not actually the one who had the vision of starting a new order. I don't think he ever saw himself in that founding role. When he was a canon, so he was a diocesan priest who lived with his bishop in religious community with other canons in the city of Osma in Spain. And his bishop, Diego, had to go on a journey. It was a diplomatic mission. He was supposed to arrange the marriage of one of the local rulers. And so he took Dominic with him as a young priest. And while they were on the road, they went through France, and especially those areas where the Albigensian heresy was really embedded. Mm-hmm. And Dominic saw that people were turning away from the church, turning away from the sacraments. Albigensianism had this dualistic hatred of the things of the matter, this body.
Yeah.
So
kind of like more modern day Manichaeist.
exactly. So if you look at what Augustine wrestled with, like Dominic saw this.
It's the problem of evil that keeps rehabilitating itself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this kind of suspicion of matter,
Right.
you
By
know.
the way, it's in Star Wars.
Yeah.
we were talking about Star Wars at lunch.
Yeah.
You know, but it's Manichaeist. I
Right.
mean, the good force, the bad force.
Right.
You know,
Right.
It doesn't
That
make
dualistic.
it doesn't mean I'm not going to watch it, but
There you go.
It's in there. It's in there. Yeah.
Well, so Dominic's heart for the people, like it was the bishop who kind of thought maybe we need a preaching mission to these people. And actually the Cistercians had started a preaching mission to the people, but all the circumstances happened that the bishop died. Dominic, like the Cistercians were not making the impact that the church was looking for. And really Dominic, very similar to Francis, had that idea of like a mendicant order. These preaching friars would go forth. So his prayer was really deep. And one thing I want to say about before we go into what your question is like that because he was fighting that heresy of the flesh being evil, Dominic had a very unique way of praying that a lot of people don't know about. He prayed in what are called the 9 ways of prayer. And he used his body in all different postures as he prayed because he really believed that the integration of body and soul was so essential. So like some of them you would hear in other saints too. Like for example, he would spread his arms out like Christ crucified and for hours would like pray in the cruciform. But one of the ones I find the most kind of charming and uniquely Dominican is he would put his hands like straight up above his head, like the shape like an arrow. And when he wanted to pray like a really powerful prayer for intercession, he'd make himself like a physical arrow
Really?
to shoot the prayers up to God. You know,
I'm going to have to look this up.
So Dominic was really into body soul unity. And
do you know any other ones by memory? I'm going to have to look this up.
You do have to look it up.
Yeah. I mean,
some of it's like he would genuflect and get back up. Some he would sit at the table reading. But he used his body. And actually, if you watch Dominicans pray, we turn, move, bow, prostrate a lot more than the average during prayer.
Really?
Because it's kind of that tradition of Dominican prayer.
I love it. I love this. I love stuff like that. That's really, really cool. Now, help me with the history. Why did Dominic not become a Franciscan? Because it was like right at the tail end of Francis's, renewal. So I thought he was just at the perfect time. The Dominican Order has just been begun by the Franciscans. They got thousands. And then he starts the Dominicans. He probably didn't he called them the Order of Preachers, I guess.
Yes.
But why was he not just folded into the Franciscans?
Well, they wouldn't have been firmly established yet where he was.
Okay.
And Francis and Dominic are almost the same time.
Oh,
Actually,
okay.
they get approved by the same pope. And Francis is the last one in under the wire of being able to introduce a new religious rule. And then the church ruled that there could be no more religious rules. So Francis had his own unique religious rule to follow, like the rule of St. Benedict, the rule of St. Francis. When Dominic was founding the Dominicans, literally, they had just changed in the internal to church legislation that there would be no more new rules. So that's why the Dominicans actually, there's no rule of St. Dominic. We follow the rule of St. Augustine.
Oh.
And then there are Dominican constitutions that follow up on that. So, but the Dominic.
So he wouldn't have been around a bunch of Franciscans?
No.
Okay.
Because think about Francis is in Italy, and it took some years before his movement becomes a worldwide order.
Okay.
And so St. Dominic is from Spain, but he's witnessing the challenges to the faith in southern France. And he actually founds the order in France, not in Spain, even though he's Spanish.
Okay.
So they're not in the same place, but they both. There's all this debate in historians, like how well did they know each other? Were they friends? But it's interesting. I'm not going to get into the weeds of that. But although I have a fun thing to say about that. But there is, they were being considered for approval by the Pope at the same time. And then when Pope Innocent III died, the next Pope, Pope Honoris, was the one who actually gave the approval to the Dominicans. So like they were really contemporary. They weren't really one after the other so much. But a lot of
I just thought Francis was a little before Dominic.
He's a little.
And would have like seen all of these things.
Right.
And in my mind, Dominic was looking at it and saying, oh, well, there's that whole Franciscan thing, but I don't want to do that. I want to do something else.
No.
Yeah, good.
And what's really interesting is that the Holy Spirit was moving in them very similarly. And it's fascinating to look at the difference because I love St. Francis. I have a huge devotion to him. And I think in Franciscan spirituality, if you read the early texts of Francis and Dominic, they're almost indistinguishable in some ways. The biggest difference would be for Francis, the witness to the poor Christ, witness in itself was the preaching, right? That you live like the poor Christ, you take Lady Poverty as bride. Like this is a deeply Franciscan
Preach
idea.
always and speak only when necessary. Right?
And then for Dominic, Dominic was very austere and he lived a very radical poverty. Okay, so it wasn't as though he had a different, but he didn't see poverty in the exact same way. But he did know that if you didn't live simply and poorly, for one, it was for the conversion of your own heart, but it was also for the effectiveness of the preaching, that there were preachers, lay people who were going around teaching the Albigensian views that were living very, very radical poverty. And so when some of the different groups, monks and clerics who came to try to convert the people back to the true faith came, they were scandalized by the fact they drove these nice horses and had retinues with them. And so Dominic recognized, if we don't live like Christ and his apostles, we're not going to have the impact we're going to have. But Dominic always placed a heavy emphasis on study. Francis wasn't a priest.
Right.
He was a deacon.
Yes.
Ultimately, but Dominic was a priest, and he was a priest before he founded the order.
That makes a difference. Yeah.
So Dominic, it's funny that for the founder of the order preachers, we do not have any of his homilies.
Really?
None.
Oh, we don't.
I think this is one of the reasons we don't. There's not a lot of following of Dominic in the church.
There's not. Yeah.
So it's really the family he founded. But he certainly, from the beginning of the order, he targeted sending the friars into university towns because he recognized that he needed to let the friars study. They actually it was an appointed office in early Dominican priories that there was a lector, like somebody who would give the theological formation to the friars so that while they're praying, they're also studying. And that would lead them to the sacred preaching. The order of preachers was founded for the sacred preaching, right? So he didn't want the Dominicans to just be like super smart. He wanted them to be very prayerfully formed in the word of God and in the things of God, so that for the glory of God and the salvation of souls, right? And so that's kind of the key of Dominican spirituality. And I think that integration of prayer and study is something that's very beautiful in the Dominican life. When I was sent to Rome to study at the Angelicum, for me, that was a real transformation of being able to study in a way that wasn't so task-oriented. American systems of education tend to get very, very efficiency-driven, very task outcomes measured. And I feel like there's something about the prayerfulness of study that's better preserved in certain parts of the world. And so when I studied in Rome, right there in the heart of the church at the Angelicum, and was just immersed in St. Thomas and the Summa, I found it a very prayerful way to study, that it was not all these papers assignments. It was just kind of like pondering. We had long, slow, deep dive into the text that we were reading. And I think for me, that was a real Dominican moment of my vocation, just to see that we're not studying for studying's sake. We're not just trying to be intelligent or impressed. That would be dangerous actually to the spiritual life. Yes. But trying to ponder God's word so that, as St. Thomas wrote, we would contemplate and give to others the fruits of our contemplation. I think that's one of the mottos of the order, right? Veritas, truth, and to contemplate and give to others the fruits of your contemplation. But interesting, I said prayer, and so I mentioned study now, and then the preaching that comes from that prayer and studying. And the other is the common life of what we call the 4 pillars of Dominican life.
Four pillars. That was prayer.
Prayer.
Yeah.
The common life. Or community. Study and preaching.
Gotcha.
So those are kind of in a lot of people's minds, kind of the 4 aspects that in all Dominicans, male Dominicans, female Dominicans, those internal to the cloister, those outside, that are kind of holding it together. And Dominic didn't want the friars to live kind of independent study lives all around, like the living of religious community. Because again, he's using Christ and the apostles as a model of fellowship. So living in monastic style community, silence, cloister, a routine within the cloister is meant to be that kind of context in which charity is lived out. Mm-hmm. So you're receiving God's grace in your life of prayer. You're living in the communal life. You're studying the word of God and the subject matter you're sent to study with the hope that you can preach it. So it's a very integrated way of living and being. Yeah,
that's like a cycle. It's in the business world, we talk about the flywheel. And the flywheel is something where you do one act that naturally leads to another act, and that leads to another act. And then the last act on the cycle naturally leads back to the first act. And so at the point, it's like perpetual motion. It keeps going. And so I could see this almost as a spiritual flywheel. Like you pray first, and then that leads to communal life. And then that leads to, if it's organized well, having a good intellectual study-based life. And if you do that well, then you want to preach that. And that further motivates you, I guess, to go back to prayer. And it's a cycle.
Yeah.
That's when things get real momentum, is because in the nature of the system is built in momentum, and it feeds itself. It's a feedback loop, and it keeps going. So that's kind of those are considered the 4 pillars of the Dominican life. Now, is that like in your constitutions, or is that just kind of what you're known for?
It would be constitutional. Dominic was, because he had to adopt a rule that already existed, the rule of St. Augustine. You'll see these elements somewhat in there. Certainly, there's things about prayer and community. The study and preaching gets a little more particular. And the Dominican Order, because Dominic had to adopt an already existing rule, he also, within his lifetime and then refined over the years of the Order's existence, there's the set of constitutions. And Dominic had some really strong views on what should happen with those constitutions. He seems to be a bit of a legislative genius, actually, because he had a bit of flexibility. And for example, some monastic rules would bind under pain of sin. Like if you broke the monastic rule, you would actually be sinning. And Dominic didn't want that. He was extreme about that, not extreme in an unvirtuous way, but I should say he's strong about that.
Rigorous.
Rigorous, yeah. He said, if you say to me that the rule would bind under pain of sin, I would take my knife and cut it up. Because he did not want the friars to have to feel like if they couldn't keep the whole every point of the rule that they were somehow sinning. He was like, these are people of goodwill who want to like serve the Lord, and he wanted the life to have flexibility, because he knew that if the preachers were going to be itinerant beggars on the street doing the active apostolate, even though they have that monastic framework, it had to be flexible.
Yeah.
So he also introduced formalized the principle of dispensation, that if for the sake of study in the apostolate, you need to be dispensed from the life inquirer, you could.
Or other way around.
Yeah. Right. So it's really, the default is you're always inquire, you're always at the communal meal, et cetera. And that is where we are formed and where there's a deepening of the virtues and the life of grace. But he was very aware that if you're going to set out across Europe and live in these university towns you had to have some flexibility. Mm-hmm. So, St. Benedict, genius that he was, like the stability of the Benedictine model was for a purpose, right?
Yes.
And so Dominic wasn't rejecting what was in that deep tradition, but he was saying, because there was such an emphasis on the apostolate of preaching, that there would need to be some flexibility within that. Yeah.
So what is your daily prayer life like as a Dominican? Well, back up. So Dominic, what year are we talking about? 1250s?
No, it's earlier than that.
1230, 40s?
In the 1210s and 1220s is the time frame in which he's proposing it to the Vatican and getting the approval for the order.
Okay. And then when is the second order established, the females?
Actually, they were first.
I don't know the story.
This is a great one. Okay. The Dominican nuns, and most people don't realize this, that even though Dominic was going to found the order of preachers in God's providence, like I said, he didn't really set out to start an order. I think that's true of most of the founders. They were just kind of responding to a charismatic call, okay? But when he had kind of informally begun to live in community in southern France with several of the men, he preached so effectively that there was a group of 9 women who had been living in the heretical sect. They were Albigensians, and they had been living in community as heretics, and they were converted by the preaching of Dominic. His preaching was so powerful, many people converted because of it. And they didn't, they wasn't really, I don't think their families wouldn't even welcome them back to their homes, because their families, that's how divided people were by these teachings. Yeah. And so these 9 women wanted to live together in community. And so the cloistered nuns, technically, those 9 women were the birth of the order, really. Wow. So in a way, I think there's something so profound in God's providence about that, because the whole effectiveness of the preaching mission of that is predominantly in the preaching of the friars, also in the teaching sisters who would come much later, right? it presupposes the grace that is coming out of the life of prayer, right? So to have the cloistered contemplative women like really living in community, really dedicated to prayer as kind of the bedrock.
Right.
And that was in southern France. Right. And so those women, that monastery still exists to today.
Really?
The Monastery of Our Lady of Prouille. It's in the southern France, and near not too far from Toulouse. And it's amazing that God made the first officially gathered Dominicans,
right?
These converted women, and then the friars within the years that right after that was happening in southern France, also in the early 1200s, they're getting more and more formalized as they come together. So more men join Dominic and say, "We want to do this. We want to live here," and so it grows, and then it spread rapidly. The Dominican Order, once the seed was planted, it kind of flourished. Wow. Similar to the Franciscans. You had a lot of desire. People could see there was a great need. They felt very called. And obviously it's a grace, like a vocation's a grace. So the Lord moved many people to want to live in this way and pray in this way and be part of that movement.
Awesome. I'm glad I asked. Now, all right, take us through the prayer. Like, what's your daily life, your daily prayer life like?
Okay. A normal day in our life would be, because we have that monastic framework, we rise early, weekdays 5.
What time?
5, and Lent 4:50.
That's not that early.
That's not so bad.
Morning, yeah.
But then we'll have silence as we get ready for the day, and then we'll meet in the chapel, and we'll have silent prayer.
What time?
5:30 a.m. and then into about 6, we'll have that silent prayer, and then we'll pray morning prayer together at Lauds. And we do that chanting in the Dominican office, and then that leads us straight into Mass.
Sorry, you said Dominican office, so it's different than the Liturgy of the Hours I pray?
No, it's the same Liturgy of the Hours, although if you've studied the history of the Dominican Order, there was a time when there was a proper rite for the Dominicans.
Like you have your own liturgy. So
yeah. And then we also have a Dominican calendar that supplements. So for the Liturgy of the Hours, all the major religious orders in the community, in the church have this, right? There's like these obscure saints and blesseds that only we celebrate. They're kind of like the internal family saints, right? Yeah. That we would celebrate. But mostly it's the regular divine office that the rest of the church, the universal church, would be praying. So we pray morning prayer in common. Then we have our communal Mass. And then when we go to our meals, so from there we go into breakfast, we preserve the monastic tradition of reading at table, and we eat in silence. And actually, it's one of my favorite of our Dominican traditions. I love the concept that while you're being fed bodily, you're also being fed spiritually. And it's one of the most, I think if people experienced it, they would want to do it. Like you just listen and so if you're living at the Mother House, it's a live reader. If you're living on one of the small missions, it might be a recording from the table readings that we've done from the Mother House. But so we do that for breakfast, have our meals served to us. We eat monastic style, all family style served. We sit in the horseshoe and, you get served. It's very beautiful. And the Dominicans even have a way we eat that's Dominican. Because one time in the early history of the order, St. Dominic was gathered with the friars, and they had gone out begging and gotten nothing that day. And Dominic said, well, we'll still sit at the table and we'll just listen to the table reading. At least we'll be fed spiritually, and we'll get food eventually.
All right, can I brag for a second?
Uh-huh.
So maybe the coolest thing that I've ever been told in my life is one of the Ann Arbor Dominican sisters told me that they read years ago my book If Aristotle's Kid Had an iPod at their meals. That was one of their meals. They wanted some Aristotle education, but in a fun way, which is what that book is. And I was like, I cannot believe that my book was read by a bunch of Dominican sisters at lunchtime. That was the coolest thing ever.
Congratulations. You've arrived.
I have arrived. And I sold about 12 copies of the book. But that doesn't matter because sisters read it to each other at mealtime. Oh, it made me feel so good. Anyway, sorry.
That is a compliment.
It is.
Often read saints, popes,
I know.
you.
And then me. It was really about Aristotle. But still, I was involved. So anyway, sorry.
Well, so this is one of those miracles well attested by many witnesses during the life of Dominic. He says, brothers will just sit, we'll listen to the reading. And we have no food, but that's okay. And so as they're sitting there, these two angelic young men, looked like men, they are angels, came and brought baskets of bread, and starting at the youngest end of now in traditional monastic life, you would serve the superior first and then that. But the angels served the youngest first. They started at the youngest end of the monastic refectory and worked up to serve Dominic last. Wow. And so
Wow, that's
we still do
beautiful.
that.
We
Like
still do
now
that.
we serve the food from the youngest to the oldest, and the superior getting fed last because we're honoring the tradition of the angels and Dominic.
Wow.
So we've got all
Wow.
these great traditions and literally lots of witnesses who've testified to these. So that's how we do our meal. And then after that, you go into your apostolate. So our student sisters would be doing their studies, the teaching sisters out in the classrooms, those who are in support services doing whatever task they've been assigned under obedience to do. And then in the evening, we are all drawn back through prayer and through our life together. So in the evening, we would have Vespers, evening prayer prayed together. Again, chanting choir to choir. We have a common rosary together after that. Oh, I should have said before that, there's exposition of the Blessed Sacrament. So those who can get home from their apostolate time have that time. They could pray later if they can't make that time. And then after that, we would have our communal evening meal together. Again.
Is that silent?
Yes.
Okay.
With the reading.
All 3 meals are silent, or just
the
breakfast?
midday meal is usually not, because the midday meal is you are wherever you are doing your service,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
And then days like Easter, Christmas, big feast days of the church.
You talk.
We
Yeah.
talk.
Right.
That's the kind of special occasion. And then in the evening after our evening meal, we have actually an hour we call recreation, an hour where we come together, because I was saying communal life is super important to our way of life. So it's informal. You can play games, you can just sit and chat, you can do a craft, but you're together.
Do most go, or are you kind of like
you are supposed to be there. I mean,
supposed to.
as I said, we have dispensation. So like if you had to do study, but it's actually written into the constitutions that is an essential and important activity of the life. So only ask for dispensation if you really needed it.
All right, so when you do that, okay, so I have a picture in my head of where you eat and where you pray. But where do you go for this recreational time?
It's kind of like a large living room, like your living room times,
something, right.
you know,
Huge.
depending on the
So
size
how many
of the
sisters do you have show up in this room?
So at our mother house, there would probably be space enough for about 100 of us to be in that room at one time if needed. They're not always that many, you know,
Right.
it could be any 50 to 100.
Right.
And then on the small missions, some of our mission houses would be homes that were converted into convents, and some were custom built as convents, but you'd always have a space that is designated for the community room.
Okay. All right.
Like you have a space that's for the library. So then that communal hour, which is actually just delightful.
Yeah, well, what do you do? What are you playing checkers? I mean, what do you guys do? What, like when was the last time you were in that communal room at community time?
What's today?
Like, okay. Yeah,
Yesterday, I guess.
Okay, so you were there yesterday.
Or the day before. Excuse me, I was traveling.
Day before yesterday. Like, what did you do when you were in there?
I played cards, yeah.
Did you?
We have a game called 5 Crowns. Anyway, but it's board games, card games, do crafts. This year I've taken up watercoloring. So
Really?
one of the sisters is helping me to learn how to watercolor.
Well, we were just
that.
talking about Monet at lunch.
Yeah,
Remember
there you go.
that?
I'm
Right,
not.
okay.
I know you don't think he's perfect, but I'm not that good yet. So I'm still on the way. But I love it. I find painting very contemplative, but I'm not really well trained yet. But I'm learning. I like to learn new things. So some of the sisters will craft. They'll make, like, we had a sister. She's deceased now, but she crocheted all these beautiful little hats for the newborns at the local hospital. Like, so it was, this is
That's awesome.
And then during the winter, some of the sisters will make scarves and gloves for some of the people. Some people come to our door to get food for the poor, and we like to give them handmade things, so they'll make beautiful scarves and, let them choose which color they like. And, we just try to use our free time to do something that's benefiting others.
Hey guys, real quick, we noticed 80% of you that watch the episodes are not subscribed. So please do me the favor and subscribe and hit the bell for notification. That helps you get the content, but it also helps this amazing stuff get spread to other people just like you. Thanks for your help. Now let's dive back in. Do you find that, and maybe this is like prying too much, but you can just tell me to shut up and move on. But do you find like you get cliques in your community?
I mean, being humans, that could happen, but I find that religious life is very anti-clique.
Yeah.
When you're it's probably anybody who's studied a little bit about religious life, you read some literature about religious life, whether it's fiction, whether it's like spiritual writers, they'll talk about the dangers of particular friendships. And I actually don't like that phrase. I think that it would be better to say the danger of exclusive friendships. And this is not just for monastics. This is for anybody. Because that phrase, I think it was just poor translation of something, because particularity is the nature of friendship. I love Aristotle's commentary on friendship and the ethics.
Yeah, right.
And I think
By the way, that book is just the ethics retold for parents. That's what it is. So I got a whole section on friendship, so
Yeah.
go ahead. Yeah.
So friendship is so important to happiness and well-being, right?
Right.
And so, I mean, when I teach people about it, I say, of course your friendships are particular in the sense that you have a particular love for this individual.
Right.
But what you don't want is exclusivity. Like, it's actually written into like our guiding rules and principles, our documents, to say, like, when you come to recreation, it's an act of charity, right? Like, you want to look out for the other sisters. There's even very practical tips of like, don't just talk about the work you do, because if others aren't involved in that work, it might exclude them. So I always find communal recreation like if you were in a family and coming together for a common meal or a common discussion together. You want to be thinking of the other. And I think it's amazing how that 1 hour can be a real school of virtue.
I bet.
Because you can kind of think, I'm tired today, I want to do this. Or you can say, I find the best recreational hour is when I say, Lord, send me the person that I need to like be present to, and like keep me open to what you want that to look like.
Yes.
And if I give God kind of that space and that permission, what I find is he always surprises me. And it's more positive, like who comes along, who sits at the table. But everybody knows in our community, like everybody's welcome. If we're doing an activity, even like we'll try to play card games with different numbers of people so like it expands so people can come. A few games are, once you got the four, you got the four. But we try to keep it open and flexible because we really want to live our communal life with genuine charity and love for each other. I mean, when you read like the autobiography of Saint Therese, she actually talks about how in the communal recreation of her convent, of her cloister, she actually intentionally chose to sit with one of the sisters that she found very difficult.
Yeah.
And she so often chose that she actually, the sister believed she really loved her as a friend, and that softened the kind of hard parts of that sister's personality.
Yes.
So when you live as closely together as we do, you do know that people, everybody has their qualities of mind and heart that are harder to deal with than others, right? But I think if you're really living from the prayer that we pray together, the way of life we live, you're really trying to love one another. And really, communal life is the harder piece. Like, it's interesting, like,
Tell me about it.
You know how this
Tell
is
me
with family,
about it.
right?
Tell me about it.
When you go out, everybody sings your praises and treats you well.
I always say you don't want to see all sausages.
But when you're at home, that's the litmus test of
hard.
what does your charity really look like, And so I think just like in the family, in community life too, that giving to those who see what we're like in the morning before coffee, that is where you really see the virtue growing. Because then the end of our day, after that communal recreation, we have a time of spiritual reading where we just come together and we're each reading our own separate books. That's where all the lovely things you publish at TAN come in. Oh. We read our spiritual reading books, but together in the chapel for 15 minutes. And then after that, we pray night prayer. Mm-hmm. And Compline night prayer has always been one of the Dominican favorites. It's like, because
it's short.
But it's like bringing that whole day, like all the intentions you have of the people you've been serving in the apostolate, all the, just bring it all back to the Lord. Like beginning and ending your day with prayer is the best.
It is.
And after Compline is when every night in the Dominican Order, we don't just sing the Salve Regina, we process. And the Dominicans have a particularly kind of formal singing. I just heard this week. One of our sisters was saying that when the Dominican had their proper liturgical rites, most things were made shorter than, say, a Benedictine tradition, because Dominic wanted to make sure you had time for study and preaching. So it was not rushed, but kind of abbreviated. Like everything was kind of. But she was saying, the one thing in the Dominican tradition that was never shortened, but it was actually lengthened, was the way we prayed to Our Lady. Mm. And so the antiphons for Marian feasts are more elaborate. And the prayer, the Salve Regina, even though the church recommends that universally as a close, we have a rather formal way we sing and chant that I found it all over the world where I've been visiting Dominicans. And we would process and like literally we process towards the area where Our Lady is in the front of the chapel. And it's a beautiful way of ending our night. And, it wasn't the very first thing that was added to Dominican life when they were founding the order, but there was a young friar who was kind of disturbed by evil and seemed like a diabolical kind of interference. And they started praying the Salve Regina for deliverance, and the evil was cast out. Yeah. And so the order has had this great devotion to Mary. And there are many miracles in the early part of the order that show Marian connection. Yeah. So being Eucharistic, being Marian is true to every Dominican. I mean, we're very much centered on preaching the word and the word made flesh and a great love of Our Lady. So that procession at the end of the evening, even like family members of mine who aren't Catholic, like when they come to visit, they're like, that is my favorite thing. They love that evening procession.
That's awesome. I didn't know that, but O Clement, O Loving, O Sweet Virgin Mary. So when you start at O Clement, do you know where that comes from? Bernard of Clairvaux added that to the Salve. The original Salve didn't have all of that. And so maybe it's apocryphal, but I read in his biography that, that he was saying Mass, and at the end of Mass, everyone sang that. And at the end, right then, he added O Clement, O Loving, O Sweet Virgin Mary. So every time I hear it, I think of Bernard. He keeps showing up. Sorry,
that's okay. Where your focus is, it's going to keep connecting.
All right. So that's your the communal life. Now, when you go out, like to work at a school, or you're deployed, I don't know what to call it. You're deployed.
Or sent on mission.
Sit on mission. You take a couple, like what's the smallest group you'll go with? Like you won't go with just 2, would you?
Normally, you would want at least 4. That's more normal. Occasionally, there might be reasons to be a house of 3, but most of the time, it's we have at least 4, and that and it's it's great if you have even more. Like we have all different sizes of house, partly because we go where the Spirit moves and where we're invited by a diocese to serve, and some schools can provide a convent that can house
4
more sisters than less, right? And sometimes when we've been in a place longer, maybe we'll only have a few at the beginning, and then if the group has the means to build a slightly bigger convent or accommodate more sisters, we can do that. We're so blessed that we have vocations in our congregation, so we can actually take new places of service, and it's a great mystery to me how in God's providence we end up in one place or another. I mean, when I entered the community, we were mostly in the southern United States because our mother house is in Nashville. But over the years, we kind of expanded throughout the U.S. and then eventually even internationally now. So
that's amazing.
It's been really beautiful to see. And right now, the vocations, in recent years, we've had, in some instances, as many overseas vocations as in the United States. So,
really?
And sometimes countries where we actually have now a mission presence, but sometimes countries we've never had a mission presence. And what is the Lord doing? Like there's something really powerful right now. I think this is a kind of Dominican moment in some sense. Yeah. The friars and the sisters of many congregations are doing really well, and it's a gift of God, a gift of the Holy Spirit.
Yeah. Now, when you get 3 or 4 that go somewhere and you're outside of the 50, is that communal life a lot harder? I would think it is, because there's like sometimes safety in numbers, so to speak, right?
Well, I think it is a little bit like most things in life. There's like pros and cons to both.
Right.
So I've lived on smaller missions, and what I love about the smaller mission is you get a chance to know the other sisters better because you're always you. It's just a few of you. So you actually, now that can go well or not. But humanly speaking, what I find is if you think about what draws people together and holds them together, we all have our different personalities, different strengths, et cetera, different challenges. But we're all there because we were called by God to live in community with each other. We're all striving, we're full in. Everybody's striving for holiness. Everyone's striving to live more for the Lord and serve. So it's kind of, if you are going to have communal living, it's the best case scenario. I mean, if you've ever just had like roommates before you were married or whatever, it's probably not the best case scenario, right? But when you have all people who are united by a common purpose and really striving in a serious way to live for the Lord, it does not mean there will not be differences and there will not be disagreements, but it does mean you have a more solid foundation for living well together than the average.
That's amazing. So like, I know with my huge family, in one sense, like my 2 favorite things are when everyone's together and I got all the kids and the grandkids and everyone's there and we're all sitting around and it's totally chaotic. And it's my favorite thing because I can look out and see, with my wife and look what we've done. Yeah. My other favorite thing is to be off somewhere with one kid. I mean, it's like, to where it's just me and him or her. And that's extremely special as well.
Yes.
So it's like, how can both, they're kind of opposites, but they're both totally special. So I could see how being in the mother house with everybody or on assignment with a small group, they're both great. Yeah. I was thinking a minute ago when you were talking about there's just the natural issue of dealing with people that your personalities might clash or just whatever it may be. And Therese made such a big effort to, spend time with somebody who kind of drove her crazy. I forget what saint, I gotta look it up, but somebody said, I don't like that man very much. I must get to know him better. Mm. And that really struck me because it's like, usually if you get closer with somebody and you see kind of really what's going on underneath the surface, you like them more.
Yes. I think always, because when you can understand, you need a context. Like we were talking about that earlier in the last episode we had done together about understanding things, but like it's just important. And that's why I actually do love when I'm sent on the missions, even if it's not a full year mission, like even if it's just a road trip, if we're going somewhere and we go together, getting to know the different sisters, if you get to know them well, you really do see them in their totality. I love when we have big events like the Profession of Vows or the Jubilee of the Sisters, when their families come to visit at holidays to the mother house. I love meeting the families of the sisters because, just think about your in-laws. When you know the family a person came from, everything makes much more sense. You're like, oh, wow, that mannerism, that gesture, that way of thinking.
Oh, absolutely. Being, it gives you context.
And so I think that's true of every relationship we have, friendships, yes. Our spouses. The more we know the context of their life and their personhood, the more we can appreciate them.
Like my wife, she was whom I love, and I love my in-laws more every year. I love you, John and Paula, if you're listening. Sometimes Paula listens. My mother-in-law listens sometimes. A convert to the faith, right? Beautiful. But I was always kind of, early in my marriage, I was kind of aggravated that my wife was kind of, I don't want to say germaphobe, but like really kind of particular, way overly concerned with cleanliness and germs and everything. And like, I never was. I didn't have any of that. And then it just kind of dawned on me one day, okay, her dad was a firefighter and her mother worked for the Red Cross. Duh. It's like, that's begging for somebody who's a little bit more sensitive to sanitation, No wonder great. She tells me to wash my hands all the time. I get it. Her mother taught people how to wash their hands properly. Yeah. So anyway, it's context. It really is.
It is. And my dad's also a firefighter. So when cool. I go around and check to make sure everything's turned off, right. The sisters get it,
right.
And we share common, you bring your wisdom with you. Actually, That's one thing that's fun in the comment was we all have different contexts we're coming from. And so, imagine, the two adults who form a marriage times 50. Okay. And so it's even fun, like different people's cooking patterns and different, so because everything we do in the comment, we take turns, so people are pitching in, doing all the different duties, taking care of things together. And so I find it fun, like what different people's strengths are. So while you've got the human, John of the Cross uses that image of, rocks in the stream that they rub against each other. And that's how the edges get smoothed.
Get smoothed out.
And he uses that for religious life, right? But I think it's for any social life, right? Your friends, your family, the religious, like we've got all these people we're there with. And it's true that when you're in the bigger group, it's like, it's more rubbing, right? You're like, wow, but it's meant to make you more polished, right? More, your love is less self-centered and your love is more given to everyone around you. You're blessed with a very big family, right? And I think every new person who comes into our lives is a call to love, like a call to go beyond myself, to actually take on board this other. So in a way, you're living a little monastic life there.
in a way, yeah, for sure. All right, so prayer, communal life, and then study. Talk to us a little bit about kind of the standard. Not everybody in your community, like yourself, is going to be sent off to get a doctorate from the Angelicum, right? So, but it's a tenet of your communal life or your I guess the constitutions. So it's expected to some degree or other. How does that apply to different people in different ways? Again, not everybody's a doctorate, but is study applicable to everyone?
Yes. So in Dominican life, you would be astonished at the formation that everyone in the community receives. So from the time we enter, because study is so integral to being a Dominican, everyone will have a basic formation, not only to become, in our congregation, a teacher, so you will do all those things that the state requires for credentials, et cetera, but we'll all do a formational program that's for every sister in philosophy and theology. Nice. And over the years, it's grown and developed really tremendously because, several of us have had the opportunity to study at some of the pontifical universities, and we've seen kind of what the formation that a priest or a seminarian would be getting in their formation. It's very parallel to what we're doing.
Wow.
So any sister in our community, no matter what she's doing as her task, she's formed to be immersed in study, especially sacred scripture, the philosophical underpinnings of being able to read Thomas Aquinas.
Yes.
And obviously the community would look at, because our study is very deeply linked to our prayer, and so we're all doing theology that helps us to pray better, right? And to know our faith deeply. And then how we're going to exercise that in the apostolate. And it's amazing because you can be teaching even little bitty kids, and if you have a depth of theological formation that's been prayed, it will come out in how you do that. Like, for example, some of our sisters are trained far more deeply than I am in catechesis of the Good Shepherd.
Right.
And it's beautiful how they're able to lead these children into prayer, but it's informed by a very deep intellectual formation,
Yes.
right? Because really good formation of the mind, if it's done in a properly ordered way, and I think the Dominicans are kind of masters of this via St. Thomas Aquinas, it will feed your prayer. Like, to have a well-ordered mind will help you also to have well-ordered desires and well-ordered affection. So for all of our sisters, that is part of being a Dominican. And then our particular fields of study, what subject areas, what level of study we'll do, are shaped in both by the individual giftings of the sister, which we don't ask. Like, I never asked to do the studies that I did, but the community is kind of looking at, where are your strengths? What age of person do you seem more inclined to teach? Are you more geared towards the administrative side of running things, or more the actual classroom teaching side? Because some of the roles that we serve in would be supporting in the schools, as well as, some will administer the schools, some will teach. But and then over the years, is there a certain subject area that you're really passionate about? I did all my foundational formation as a young sister, but when I was sent for my first master's degree after I got my teaching credentials, I was shocked that the first master's I was sent to do was in English literature.
Really?
And I was thrilled.
Really?
But I remember saying, I get to study English? I love English. And the peer said, you're fabulous in it. You love to read and write. And she said, we need people to teach all different subjects, and you're gifted in this. So let's do this. And she said, look, when you study literature, you're studying the human person. You're studying, it's not unrelated to the things you're learning theologically and philosophically.
Oh, yeah.
And then later on, I was sent to also do a master's in that, and then ultimately a doctorate. And
Shakespeare is like a summa in human behavior,
Exactly.
In a way,
Actually, in one of my grad classes, I did a paper on Shakespeare's tragedies as a study of Thomistic virtue.
Oh, wow. There we go.
So,
Wow.
it's definite. And for me, I think when you study something like English literature, the humanities, anything you study, and then that's very Dominican, any truth, whether that's mathematics and science or literature, any truth is ultimately leading you to first truth, capital F, capital T.
My favorite intellectual activity is connecting the dots.
Mm-hmm.
And what you end up seeing is everything's connected.
Yes.
And then you see kind of the flip side, which is evil is a really boring version of the absence of all these connections and absence of all this good. It's privation.
Yes.
But you start seeing, there's 100 ways to be creatively good, and there's only one really boring way to be bad.
You're right.
And so I don't know if I can explain
That's like
right,
a true Thomist.
Oh, is it? Okay. Well, that's what seems to me. So yeah, that's my favorite activity, is connecting these dots, and I almost get more excited when I see a truth buried in the Odyssey or something. Mm-hmm. And I see this incredible truth that it helps me understand the ultimate truth, even in some ancient Greek thing. Then I almost get more excited at that than reading something from Augustine or something. So I do love that. So I totally get that. Keep going. So you're getting your master's in English lit, right? And that's what you were sent to do. But everyone has some kind of not everyone gets a master's, right?
Most will.
Most will get a master's.
And most will, and for our sisters, and most would have that in theology or philosophy, and then maybe an additional subject area. And
so I mean, everyone gets an undergrad then. Everyone gets a Everyone gets a BA or BS.
And so we're really well poised. We're one of the few communities, I think, that still accepts people who don't yet have an undergraduate degree.
I was going to ask that.
Because we have a college that's ours.
Yeah,
so that's where I teach. I teach at Aquinas College, and our primary audience of students is our own sisters, even though others can join us. And so we're able to give that thorough philosophical, theological, and practical training for education and some of the liberal arts areas there. And we have some, we start with the undergrad if they don't already have that. Some women who enter our community already have multiple degrees. So whatever they're missing for, they'll all get the formational program in philosophy and theology, even if they've already studied that at a high level. So because there's a good thing to the commonality. This is one thing I would say, that there's a link between not only the study and the preaching, because obviously we're studying for the sake of giving these truths to others in love, but also for the communal life dimension. So our formation program, you would be astonished at how many classes we all take, regardless of background. And then, I mean, like I had a student who already had a doctorate in canon law, and she was sitting in my 101, basic fundamental theology class.
Oh, wow. Wow.
But that's because I actually have never seen our sisters bored in these classes. I mean, there's a communal dimension to pursuing the truth together within a community that is praying together. I mean, originally universities were founded to be this way, right? I mean, that's why there's the quad. Yeah. You slept, prayed, studied, and ate your meals.
Oh, I didn't know
with
that.
A learning community. It was based on the monastery.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, right.
So original university structure actually came out of monastic life. And so the idea that these people that I share my life with and pray with, I'm also studying with. And then having, when we do have those recreational hours or conversation, to have a basis of study that's really a shared wisdom, it's a great glue for the community. Like, we're really pursuing wisdom together.
Yeah.
And so not only our formal studies, but our community also commits itself to ongoing studies. So, for example, this year, our communal-wide study for all the professed sisters is that we're reading Augustine's Confessions, and then we have study questions that we all prepare, and we come together once a month to share our thoughts on that. So we do that on church documents. We do that on great classical spiritual writing.
Wow.
So I would say the level at which we're getting the readings every day through the liturgy, we're getting the readings at table, we're studying a common study, plus we're studying to prepare for our teaching. Honestly, we're just swimming in these beautiful truths. And I think it really gives a great basis for good conversation.
I bet your conversations are awesome. By the way, you know who just did a new translation of Augustine's Confessions, and that's Tan, translated by Anthony Eslin, Dr. Anthony Eslin. So make sure you leave here with that.
That would be great.
It's awesome because he's like a literary master.
Yes.
And he's a master translating a master.
Right.
It's just really beautiful.
Yes.
So yeah, that's good. Okay, so that's your study. So your whole life kind of has this studious rhythm to it without it being overwhelming, but everyone there is going to get a solid education and ongoing.
Yes.
But you said a minute ago, the purpose of that is for I guess the formation of your own soul, but then also the preaching, sharing this with others. Is that what the preaching means, is sharing this with others?
Yes. And then again, go back to that motto of St. Thomas Aquinas, to contemplate and give what is contemplated. And what's interesting is it's translated differently from the Latin, but to contemplate and give that which is contemplated. So it's primarily your prayer life of Christ and giving Christ to others. But then secondarily, this, whatever you're pondering in your studies, it's very oriented towards not only your own ability to pray more deeply, live community life. It's all integrated, but then go forth and preach. We are the order of preachers. OP is what you have at the end of our name for the order of preachers, right? It's good that it works in Latin and English.
Right.
So that the order was founded with that particular mission in the church of to share the preaching of Christ. And again, Dominic saw the vowed life itself, the common life itself, as part of the preaching, the poverty itself as part of the preaching. However, we also, from the beginning, in Dominic's founding of the order, had this dynamism towards preaching in an active way, undergirded by the prayer of the contemplative. So our preaching for our community of sisters, it's most commonly found in teaching. Interestingly, in recent years, we have had other forms of preaching apostolate as the Holy Spirit's kind of led us to new countries. So when you go into another country, I was in our first international mission, which was in Sydney, Australia. I worked for World Youth Day with Pope Benedict, and then we stayed on. And I remember in the dialogue about like because we couldn't go right into the schools, because when you're working internationally, you don't have the credentials for that country. So, for example, when we were discerning that, we were like, okay, what's a preaching apostolate, but we can do at this moment in this place? And in that case, it was campus ministry, you know? So depending on what countries we're in and what the structures of those countries are, the preaching has some flexibility, you know? So mostly, I mean, it's stated for us that it's always going to be prioritized to actually be in the schools. But when that's not what's available, we can preach in other ways, right? So we do a lot of retreat work. We do a lot of campus ministry, working in certain places. We're working in the parish to do like faith formation groups there. So there's
coming on podcasts.
Coming on podcasts, that's right. And so, and actually the media has opened up a little different of an avenue for preaching.
That's a real thing. Yeah. It's a real thing.
We hope so.
It is,
So there are a lot of opportunities, but we always know that you didn't, like St. Paul says, we didn't come to preach ourselves, right? We came to preach Christ and Christ crucified and risen, right? So I think all of this is so integrated that the way we pray is where it's all coming from, you know, to use a Dominican, Father Jean Corbon's image, the wellspring of worship. From that wellspring of worship, from the sacred liturgy, we're receiving this overflow of grace, right? It's welling up within us that then expresses itself in our communal living with each other, and then formed in this prayerful study becomes a way of preparing to preach the word. And like you said, leading back into our prayer, because I would say not only is our prayer directed towards God, but also our neighbor, in that we're working in the schools, the parishes, the dioceses where we're serving, and very much carrying the prayers of the people we serve back to the choir with us. You know, I love in our night prayer in Compline, we have a line in our preparatory prayers for Compline that says, we go through all these lists of intentions, and at one point we say, and for everyone who has asked for our prayers.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And I love that explicitly stated every night, because I'm like, throughout the day, even in the airport coming here, you know, people will always be asking for prayer. And I love that about living religious life and wearing the beautiful Dominican habit, and kind of, it's not about drawing people to myself, but reminding them of God's love for them. And I find that everywhere I go, people will stop me and ask me for prayers and ask advice. And when you become sister, you become really there for the whole people. And in every culture, every language, I've never been anywhere that people don't seek you because they're seeking God. And so they can trust that this woman consecrated to Christ, this bride of Christ, is actually for them. And I love that we have that calling.
All right. So we've been through those 4 pillars, prayer, communal life, study, preaching. Let's turn, in the little bit of time we have left, to, I got a 15-year-old daughter and a 13-year-old daughter. Give dad advice on how to help them properly discern, practical steps to take. How do you talk to them? Because you want your kids to discern, but I don't have Dominican sisters right around the corner. What's a dad to do?
Good question. Well, I think firstly, just form them in habits of prayer. And certainly we have the beautiful traditions of prayer in our church. And I know you're all doing that, right? Praying as a family, going to mass, praying together as a family, modeling both liturgical prayer and personal prayer. You know, I when I lived in Italy, I used to go down to the military base where the American families were, and down in southern Italy. And I was really moved by the fact that these military families have to move all over, so they never know where they're going to quite be. The ones I stayed with, we would stay with the families while we were getting ready to do the catechesis for the kids. And several of the families that I visited, they would have nighttime rituals of praying together as a family. And this has included the little bitties, but, you know, after the dinner, the one family would get up and they would all, because dinner is where they were expected to all be there if they could be and be together. And then they would go and they had a lovely crucifix in their living room, and they would kind of out loud pray for all the intentions they all had, and kind of, it was just beautiful that they had both their formal grace at meals, they're going to mass together, but this kind of like spontaneous prayer together as a family. And then another family I stayed with, the kids were in bunk beds in the room, and they would go in, and before they would go to bed at night, they'd all gather together, and like everybody was expected to be there and kind of say what they wanted to pray for that night and who they wanted to pray for, and I thought, isn't this beautiful that they're forming them both in prayer they pray together in the formal liturgical sense, but also in just bringing your heart to the Lord. And then I think just even your attitude towards God's will for them. Like, so many times when kids are growing up, we're like, what do you want to do? And our culture tends to promote what has a lot of money associated with it, a lot of prestige associated with it. And I think saying to people like, what do you think God is calling you to? Like even changing up the wording, or like when you recognize in your kids a certain talent, and I'm not talking about just big visible things like, oh, you play the piano well, but even the little things like the virtues, to say, you were really generous with your sibling. Thank you. As a teacher, this is part of my spiritual maternity, my spiritual motherhood. I love to look, any age student, look for what are the real virtues, strengths in them, and in kind of ways off to the side, kind of say, I noticed that you reached out to that person who was by themselves. Please keep doing that. It's a really beautiful gift, and then as they mature, keep recognizing their giftings. By the way you speak to and about different callings in life, you actually demonstrate your openness. What is God calling you to do? Why do you think that brings you joy? Like even ask them questions that help them notice God in their lives. And then on the practical level, if there is an opportunity for them to meet religious, great.
I know. I'm regretting my daughter's not here right now. I should have brought him to have lunch with you at least, But
missed opportunity, but maybe we'll have another.
I know. It's like it's just life gets in the way. I have so many guests come in, and it's just like. But once you were with Jason's family last night, and I'm like, wow, I should have got my daughters here.
And it's good for us too. It was great for me to see what rosary looks like in the family.
Oh, no, right.
People diving off couches. Anyway, it made me realize that my little quiet monastery life is a little bit of a perk. However, I actually really enjoyed the family dynamic of it.
Our family rosary too. It's quite an adventure.
But I think those formation and habits of prayer, the way we kind of talk about different states in life, and openness, the general attitude of openness. But then as they get older, this is true. I knew some families where, especially if they didn't have any religious anywhere nearby, there are dads who it's like a special birthday treat when you turn a certain age to take a road trip and visit a monastery or convent.
Yes.
When I saw this, it blew me away. Like there was a dad and daughter, and there's a certain special seasons, like you were talking about when you did that you can do a one-on-one trip with one of your kids. That it's kind of like I learned from one dad that his kids with the Chronicles of Narnia, there was an age at which you could read it with dad, and it was like a one-on-one read with dad.
Yeah, right.
And the kids, of course, they look forward. What kid doesn't look forward to with mom or dad one-on-one that you're just. So when I saw this dad doing a pilgrimage with his daughter to our mother house one time, I was like, are you serious?
That's awesome.
And it was so beautiful. And I was like, oh, I'm kind of jealous. Like, that's lovely.
Well, I tell a lot of parents, I'm like, listen, everyone takes college days real seriously. Like you're taking your junior or senior in high school to like colleges. And it's like, you need to do the same thing with vocations. Like you need to, I don't care, girl, guy, you need to say, okay, we need to go see some Benedictines and some Dominicans and some Franciscans. They all see diocesan priests. They all see that. Mm-hmm. But I think parents need to think about religious visitations like they think of college days.
Yeah. I think that's a great piece of advice because, and then think about it. If your family has a little family library, or even better, does some reading together. One of the sisters I entered the convent with, she's one of 10 children, and her dad used to have like communal spiritual reading for about 15 minutes a day after dinner.
That's big.
And would actually pull out different books, and including books of the lives of the saints, so that they got exposed to a lot of different spiritualities and different states in life, right? And I tell you, I learned all my best ideas from things that I didn't actually do growing up. So like the Lord can work. But I remember thinking, I would have loved that. Like I would have loved if our family actually had like communal spiritual reading together.
So let's say you got a high school daughter who's what, junior, senior? What's the first official step of like coming and visiting? Or like, do you have like vocational awareness weeks? Like how does somebody who's interested take the next step? Hey guys, did you know that the Conor Gallagher Show is also on Spotify and Apple Podcast? Be sure to go over there and give us a follow. Thanks so much. Now back to the episode.
When they're 18 or older, they can actually come on a retreat by themselves, but like with other women that are coming. Our community, most communities probably would have like discernment weekends. and or just general weekends.
For anyone 18 or older.
Yes.
Right.
So younger than that, what would normally happen? Well, there's some groups, like if you're in a homeschooling co-op or a high school where you have some like a youth leader, some people do these things they call nun runs, where they actually like bring a group of girls, and you could do that even if they were under 18, because for a lot of legal reasons, you have to, like, if you're having people residentially stay in your home, you need it to be.
But they could go visit.
But they could come visit. And actually, usually when they do these quote unquote nun runs, they do it with college age, but they can do it with high school age.
Nun runs. I love it. We got to get together a group of all these wonderful little high school girls around here and take them to like 5 convents.
And that's exactly what you do. You do like a little visit in each one.
Wow.
And normally what you do is go to prayers with the sisters. So they see every community has its own kind of style of how it prays together, and then do some kind of an activity with the sisters, whether you're going out to serve with them or having one of their fun activities with them. And actually, there are girls who found their vocations in that. It at least plants a seed. And then if you're living somewhere, if somebody listening is like, I'm not near any convent, it's amazing how many young people today find vocations opportunities online. Yeah. You know, there are beautifully designed websites, and even though that's not the ideal is to be in person, like where they can at least kind of explore it and kind of, so if some people are homeschooling, I know in our high schools, we'll actually assign it when we're talking about different states in life. We'll assign, look up, research different communities and make like a little flyer or a poster or whatever. Actually, the girls loved design your own vocation brochure. Like if you were trying to promote this community, how would you do? And so this is our website that's appearing up here right now. And our sisters actually did quite a great job. And what you'll find on most websites is there's not only hopefully compelling images of the life, there's even a day in the life. Like if you dig around on here, you'll find that.
Right.
The vocations tab or section on a website will normally also have who would you contact if you wanted more information.
Right.
Some people do start writing even when they're young, or start, you know. Wow. And then there are groups that have produced videos and that kind of thing, and some of them are really, really well done.
It is well done. Yeah. What a great looking website! Great videos.
Yeah.
Gosh.
I have to say that, remember, we're Dominicans of St. Cecilia, and that's because we're not only Dominican that we've been talking about, but also have a dedication to St. Cecilia, the patroness of arts. And
so if you guys do something, you want it beautiful.
Well, beauty is absolutely essential in how we come to God, right?
Yeah.
So I hope that we wouldn't produce something unless it was really beautiful. And so, but it also should be truthful. Like this is really our life, like kind of there you see our, just our working with the
Catechism
kids.
of the Good Shepherd,
right,
yeah. By the way, so when I hired Jason Gale, I saw I was going through resumes, and they kind of all look the same, theology or catechesis degree from Steubenville, like they all look the same. Worked in a parish, whatever. But then I saw this one, it was like certified Ford mechanic and taught catechesis to Nashville Dominican nuns. I'm like, that's my guy. Like, I don't know how it's the same person, but it's like, that's him. I knew it was him, had an interview. I'm like, he's totally the guy. So it's like, anyway, it's just a very cool thing. It's like, if he was able to live and survive with Ford mechanics and then also with these beautiful nuns, it's him, and it is him. He's amazing.
I think a good hire. I'm going to affirm you.
Oh, he's amazing. He's amazing. We
loved working with Jason.
He's amazing. Well, that's incredible. So if after they're 18, they contact you and they say, "Hey, I want to." Do you have like set, visitation things for people who are interested at 18 or older a couple times a year, or how do you handle that?
Yes. So even on our website, it will have every year they'll be published like at the beginning of the academic year what retreats are available that year. The ones that we have that are general for any woman who just wants to visit, and single woman who just wants to come, not technically saying I'm discerning, but just wants to have a good prayer weekend. Those are called Jesu Caritas. And so the Jesu Caritas retreat, those are usually huge. We usually get something like 75 to 100 at that, okay? And then we also have more targeted vocations discernments retreats. So usually a woman would first do the Jesu Caritas retreat,
there it is,
and then would do the longer, more extended vocations retreats. And the Jesu Caritas, even though a lot of women will start there, even if they are discerning, it's a little less committal. It's just kind of get a taste. And also people can just come locally. Say you're traveling in Nashville. You can come by. Our prayers are open to the public. So people can come.
It's beautiful.
And that's a nice kind of just, I mean, when I was in high school, because our sisters taught me, we would do little trips down to Nashville that were just fun. And we'd stay with the sisters for a few days, and they weren't really vocations retreats, but they would just come and see. And I didn't even realize that when I was just a teenager and I would leave, I would always cry when I left. And I was like, I just feels like I'm leaving home. But I never even thought like that was at that stage. Like I said, until 16, I never really seriously occurred to me that I might have a vocation. But yeah, it was just so beautiful to be with the sisters. And I mean, they were joyful, fun, and beautiful, the liturgy, the prayers. So the public is welcome to our prayers. So people who are just coming to Nashville, they'll call our numbers on the website and just say what time of prayers. We can come to evening prayer or mass in the morning. And so that's like even if you're just passing through. And then those retreats are published as. And then the vocation retreats are a little different because when a woman gets to the stage that she's actually feeling she might have a vocation, and a good community will never pressure, never. Vocation discernment is always, always about just listening. What is God doing in your life? Vocations directors are very well prepared for what kind of questions to kind of figure out what God is up to in the person's soul. But those are a little longer and they're more like our life. So for example, if you came on the regular Jesu Caritas retreats, it's not going to be meals in silence, et cetera. Where they come on a vocations retreat, we make it as much like our real day as possible because we want to give structure to that. And honestly, it's such a beautiful process and lots of time to figure this out. You know, some people can tell right away. Yes or no. And even the no, I always say, don't be afraid. I mean, there's nothing, I feel like if you make the analogy, even though it's only limitedly analogous about visiting college campuses, you know, when you think something's your dream school and then you go to it and you're like, this doesn't fit me at all. Like you can tell so much when you're there. And, you know, so many amazing women come and make retreat with us. And some right away will know this is not something I'm called to long term. But sometimes the Lord will say, yeah, this is actually where I'm calling you.
Well, apparently he says it a lot because you get a lot of vocations. You guys are doing
We're
good.
very blessed that the Lord is calling people to our community, and I get to teach the young sisters. I'm teaching them in their formation program and for the theology, and I love it. They are so fun, smart, just on fire with love for the Lord, really, really ready to embrace this way of life and to go forth and preach and teach. I'm excited for the church that we're getting such beautiful young women coming our way. I mean, like they're ready. And look out, world. There's a great batch of young sisters coming, and our sisters also help teach some of the seminarians of our diocese, and there's both in the diocesan seminary and in our community, just all these young people coming and really generously stepping up. And sometimes people get dark about the future of the church. I'm like, I am full of hope for the future of the church. I mean, the Holy Spirit's not going to leave us. And I think good, holy family life is the foundation for the discernment of all the vocational paths. And I think a parent who prays, who helps their child to see that listening to God in the way you make your day-to-day choices for living your family life. If a person's prayerfully listening for God's will, you can't go wrong, right?
That's awesome.
So
that's good.
So thank you for raising your family to be open, and we'll see.
Oh, man.
Maybe you'll be part of the Dominican family someday yourself.
We're trying. Gosh, I'd feel so good if we had a Dominican, but it's up to God. It's not up to me.
That's exactly.
But anyway, sister, we got to get you to the airport, but you've been amazing. Thank you for all of this. I mean, just to kind of go through these 4 pillars of Dominican spirituality, I learned a ton about Dominic I didn't know. And just hearing what your life is like, it's refreshing. It's inspiring. It makes me want to go home and be a better dad. So, and I'm going to try my best to get my daughters to eventually visit you guys, just for their own discernment. But you're amazing. You're a tremendous servant to the Holy Mother Church. Thank you for everything you do.
Well, thank you. And thank you for having me here and all the hospitality everyone at TAN has shown me. And I look forward to whatever the future brings.
All right. We'll hopefully do some more work together. God bless you, sister.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks guys for checking out the Conor Gallagher Show. Please take a moment to like, subscribe, or comment, or whatever you got to do to support it. And I appreciate that very much.